Hi, it's Paraic here from Horkins and welcome to the very first Midwest Radio Live Facebook gardening show. In today's program, I'm going to share with you some ideas on adding colour to your garden in patio pots and containers. We're also going to chat about adding colour in hanging baskets and window boxes. I'm going to feature some of my best and favourite plants that you can plant at this time of year. And we're going to chat about wildflowers and how to add wildflower colour to your garden. So come on into the studio and I'll talk you through all the key things that you can do in your garden over the next couple of weeks. Now, so May is all about thinking about summer colour, adding colour to pots, containers, window boxes, to flower from now right through the summer until late autumn. And I've picked a collection of my favourite garden plants that are easy to grow. You can start planting them now, certainly in pots and containers. Give them a little bit of watering, give them a little bit of feed, and they're going to flower right through to the end of the summer. So starting with patio planters, and the size of container, when you're doing up your containers, it's really important to pick a container that's going to take a reasonable amount of compost and a reasonable amount of plants. So size does matter. Small pots are hard to water, they're hard to maintain. You're better off with something quite large, a nice chunky pot. It can be terracotta glazed or a plastic pot like this. And you're looking for something to give lots of colour, a little bit of height in the container as well. And the plant I've picked today is a plant called the Cape Mallow. It's just coming into flower. It's been flowering actually through April. There's literally hundreds of buds on this plant, and it's going to continue to flower right through until October and into November. It'll probably grow another 6 or 8 inches over the summer period, and it'll fill out again about a foot wider in diameter over that period. But to that, I'm also going to add some additional colour. Some plants that will trail over the edge of the container, and some that will give a little bit of height in the centre. Now, if you wanted something a little bit different than the Cape Mallow, you've also got plants like a butylon, which is a lovely plant. Again, you can see it's just coming into flower now. It's a two-tone plant. So again, you've got the yellow and the red. And again, the butylons are perfect for the center of a container. You can plant them out in your garden soil as well, and they start to flower again in April and flower right through until October. Another favorite of mine is a plant called the Paris daisy or agaranthemum. Again, it comes in a whole range of different colors, in yellows, in whites. This is a pink, it comes in a red form as well. And again, you've got that nice central stem, clean stem, which allows you to plant around the base. And again, gives lots of colour, and again will stay in flower until October. And of course, fuchsias, which again are beautiful. They're just beginning to flower now, and fuchsias will also give you that sense of height in the centre of the containers. But for today, I'm going to use the Cape Mallow. It's a beautiful plant. Here's another version of it here in a slightly lighter pink colour, but you probably can see it on camera there, but there's absolutely tons of flower buds there waiting to open. Good quality compost is important as well. I'm using the GrowWise Board Nimona compost, and here in Ireland, Board Nimona do a brilliant job at making really good quality compost. And to that, I'm going to add some slow release fertilizer. So this is a special fertilizer that can be used on both flowering plants, hanging baskets, window boxes, and indeed you can use it for edible plants as well. It's slow release, which means it feeds for up to 6 months. So if you add it to your compost now, it'll release its nutrition right through the spring, summer, and autumn period. So all you do is add about half a handful to this size pot and just mix it into the compost. So gently mix it in. It's a very safe fertilizer because it won't burn plants, so it's not caustic. It won't damage plants that you're going to plant into the compost, and as I said, it will feed the plants for up to 6 months. Now we're looking for a range of plants to give a little bit of height here in the center, and also plants that are going to cascade, because this is quite a tall pot. This is from the Elho range. They come in different colors, lovely cherry pink, and because you've got the height, some trailing plants are going to work really well in this basket or in this container. Remember to pack in the plants really well, because the bit of competition between the plants ensures more flowers and it covers the entire surface of the pots. So I'm going to add a plant called Celosia. So this comes in a whole range of different colors: purples, orange, reds, yellows. Again, Celosia is just beginning to flower now, and again will flower right through to the end of the summer. You could use geraniums, you could use upright petunias. So we're just going to scrape back the compost and literally pop the plant in. Push it in there and firm the compost back. So I'll use a red as well, the orange and the red. Again, make sure the compost is moist but not too wet when you're planting. Just firm the plants in, and you could put a third one on this side, maybe a yellow, just to give a contrast to colours. We still have some gaps, so I'm going to use trailing petunias. These are just the ordinary trailing petunias. Now when you buy them in your local garden centre, they're going to look a little bit like this at the moment. And a key tip is to pinch them back, is just to trim off some of the outer stems. So all you do is, once you buy the plants, give them a light trimming back. Even if there's a flower on the plant, it's a good idea to trim it back. And by doing that, we double the amount of stems the plant will produce, and hence we're going to double the amount of flowers. So a light trimming back is very advisable on all trailing plants. So it can be petunias, bacopas, any trailing, the little million bells, give them a light trimming back. Even if there's a flower there, remove it. And again, I'm just going to push that in to the edge of the compost. When you're filling the pot with compost, don't bring it up right up to the top of the pot, because when you're watering it, it makes it very difficult. The water will just run over the side. So try to leave about an inch, maybe an inch and a half of a lip just inside the pot. So when you do water, the water percolates down into the soil. So that's our trailing petunias. I'm going to use one of the million bells, which is similar to petunia, but it's just got a smaller flower, and it produces literally hundreds of flowers. But again, I'm going to remove those flowers, because by removing them, we're going to double the size of the plant and double the amounts of flower. So that plant will actually fill out twice the size, and you get 2 or 3 times the amount of colour from it. Remember, the little million bells comes in various shades, so that's a lovely orange. This is a white, yellow, they come in reds, shades of pink. And again, they're coming into flower during May, and they'll flower in October. So I'll push in the little million bells there, and that's going to cascade about a foot out of the pot, so it's going to give lovely colour. Just a little bit of contrast, this is a lovely dainty little patio plant which can be used in hanging baskets, window boxes or containers. It's a plant called brachycome, and again, flowers right through the summer, and guess what? It's going to get a light bit of a haircut here again. And so really what we're doing here is encouraging the plant to produce new growth, and on that new growth we're going to get a lot more flowers. So you lose a little bit of colour for a week or two, but it's going to reward you with twice the size of the plant and a tremendous amount of colour. So again, just take that, push it in. So that's, and again, you see how close I'm planting them together, because you want the plants to create a little bit of competition between each plant, and that's going to increase the amount of colour you get from the plant. Remember, they've got plenty of room here to grow down. I'm also going to mix a little bit of a lovely plant, a double flowering plant called bacopa. It comes in white, it comes in lavender, it comes in shades of purple. Again, you can see the little flower buds that are being produced, but again, guess what? We're just going to give it a light trimming back, and again, we're going to end up with a far bushier and a plant that's going to produce a lot more flowers. So again, just taking that off, again, I'm going to just squeeze that in here. And I think I have room for one more. So I'm going to put in a splash of yellow. And again, a lovely plant for hanging baskets, window boxes, containers. This is one called Bidens, B-I-D-E-N-S. Really easy plant. It contrasts really nicely with trailing petunias, the purple of trailing petunias, or the blue of the brachycome, or the celosias. So yellow is a great plant to get a nice bright splash of colour. And this is one called Bidens. And again, just a light trimming back. I'm just removing those few flowers. Give it a very light trimming back. There you go. And that's ready to put into the container. Really strong roots. And just push it in. So I've got my central plant, which is the Cape Mallow, giving lovely colour. I've got trailing petunias. I've got the celosia, which will give a little bit of upright colour, the million bells. And all that really now requires is a good watering, and place it on a south-facing area, somewhere that's going to get sun for most of the day. So south or west-facing patio area is really the ideal location. Give it an occasional liquid feed, so something like the Blooming Magic is really good. Again, whenever you're watering the plant, maybe once a week, give it a little bit of Blooming Magic, and that will keep it flowering right through to the end of the summer. And those plants will actually cascade right down over the pot. So it'll be a blaze of colour. All of the plants I mentioned, the Cape Mallow, the lovely Abutilon. They're suitable for any size of pot, so it can be a big terracotta pot, it can be, you can plant them out into the borders or beds as well. But the nice clean stem gives you that ability to be able to plant around the base of them. Another favourite of mine is this one. This is one called Calistenum, or bottle brush. Look at the old bottle, remember the old bottle brush for cleaning the milk bottles? That's how it gets its name. And it produces these lovely red plumes of flower throughout the summer. Again, it's a plant that will come back next year. So once you plant it, you'll have it for several years. So that's the planting up of the patio planters. Now is an excellent time to do that. And remember that light trimming back will encourage lots of new growth and lots of flowers on the plant. It's also the time of year for planting up hanging baskets. And again, starting with a good quality compost. So again, remember I'm using the Board Nimona. They do a range of different composts in the Grow Rise range. They're all really, really good. So good quality multi-purpose compost. Again, we're using the slow release fertilizer. So again, about half a handful is sufficient. So half a handful, just mix it into the compost. Now you do need still to feed the plants, give them a little bit of liquid feed. This just gives a good base fertilizer to keep the plants going through the summer. And again, you'll notice that I haven't brought the compost right up to the top of the basket. I'm leaving about an inch so that when you do water it, the water percolates down into the soil. Good idea maybe just to raise the level of the compost, just have it slightly taller in the center. And again, I'm looking for something to give a little bit of upright color. So something that will grow about 7 or 8 inches out of the pot. So again, I'm going to use one of the Celosias, a slightly different color. This is a lovely lavender or purple, rich purple color. Again, it's going to give me nice height here in the center. It'll bush out as well and give a lot of color. Now here's a basket. I'll show you this in a second, one that I did about 2 weeks ago. And you'll notice that there's no flowers on the plant just yet. But what I do have is a really, really bushy foliage, the amount of foliage that's on the plants, and many of them are beginning to produce their buds. But because they got that light trimming back 2 weeks ago, you can see how nice and full the basket is. So the plants are doing really well, and they are going to cascade right over the edge. They'll come down a foot out of the basket and give loads and loads of colors. You can also see how well I've packed in the plants. So there's about 7 or 8 plants in that hanging basket, which will give lots and lots of color. So again, slightly taller plant in the center, Celosia, and again, it's all trailing plants after that to go down over the edges. So again, I'm just going to use a mixture, maybe something a little bit different. These are purple petunias, again, a nice bit of dark color. So this will contrast really well with the yellow of the Bidens. The two of those will go really well together. They'll spark off one another. But here again, we're going to just give it a very light trimming back. You can do this with the scissors, with the secateurs, an old shears, anything at all. Just remove the flowers, remove the flowering buds, and simply push in the plants. I mean, what could be easier? You just simply push in the plants, have the compost moist but not too wet. And again, if you're using an awkward hanging basket like this one, sit it into a pot. That'll hold it steady. It'll stop it rocking around. Again, I'm going to use some of the lighter purple petunias. Again, just a light trimming. So do this with all your hanging basket plants, trailing plants, anything that you want to fill out and get really bushy and produce more color. Then a light trimming back is highly advisable. I'm going to use the yellow Bidens again, because it gives such a splash of color. Remember, this is actually going to come at least a foot or 15 inches out of the basket and produce tons of flower right through till October, maybe into November. So again, just very lightly trimming back. It's as simple as that. Again, we push in the plant. So I'm looking to put in 6 to 7 plants quite closely together. I've 4 in already, so I'll fill probably 8 into this. A little of the blue brachycomb again. Again, just a light trimming. There you go. It doesn't look as pretty as it did a minute ago, but it's going to be, believe me, it's going to make a super plant, a far better plant. We've shades of purple, we've shades of pink, bright yellow, the blue of the brachycomb, I think a little bit of white just to neutralize the color a little bit. Now, white is great, and it comes, these are the little million bell whites, but you've got lots of really good trailing plants in white, perfect for baskets and containers. Don't worry if a little bit of the compost falls away, that's perfectly fine. The plant will reshoot and reroot again. And I think finally I'm going to put a little tinge of orange. I haven't used this yet. Again, this is the Million Bell petunias in that lovely two-tone colour. Again, they're just coming into flower, but let's just go through the same procedure. Remember, these are going to be back in flower within 2 to 3 weeks. So that'll be early June, and they'll flower again right through to November. So pop it in just there, push it in. Now what you can do with hanging baskets as well, what I often do is, see this plant just here? This is a little trailing plant called nasturtium, and I actually sowed that from seed. So once I have the hanging basket planted up, you simply just push a couple of the seeds of nasturtium. These are short stemmed varieties that will trail over the edge of the basket. Varieties like Alaska is a really good one, and simply they'll cascade over. You just simply push the seed in, maybe 5 or 6 seed, they'll germinate and they'll give you tons of colour later on. So all we need to do is give it a good watering. The weather is a little bit cold at the moment for putting the baskets out just yet, so I would keep that in a patio, conservatory, greenhouse, tunnel if you had it, for a couple of weeks until things start to warm up. But it's certainly the time of year to start planting your hanging baskets and containers. So it's as simple as that. Regular watering, regular feeding with the Blooming Magic just to keep them flowering. The other key thing to do is during the summer, occasionally go out and deadhead the flowers. Maybe when you're watering their containers, as the flowers start to go over, just take off the old flower. So as it starts to fade, just simply pick off the old flowers, and that'll encourage new blooms all the time. Or if you want, if there's a lot of flowers that are beginning to fade, just give it a light trimming back with the snips, and that'll get the plant to regrow again, particularly if you're feeding it and watering it. Both of those are going to give us colour certainly right through September, October, up till the first week of November, quite easily. So moving along, I've also picked, so just to recap on the hanging basket, again, you can see how lovely and full this basket is. I've used the ivy leaf geranium, the trailing geranium in the center, just for a bit of height. It's going to cascade. I've used the yellow bidens, this plant here, just here. The nasturtiums I've talked about, white bacopa, some lobelia here as well. So just a collection of different plants. There's the trailing petunia, and you can see how well it has filled out. So that was half that size 2 weeks ago, and it has doubled in size. You've got double the amount of stems and double the amount of flowers that are going to come on that plant. So regular watering and regular feeding is all that I need to do. I've picked 5 really easy plants. We always get a great reaction when I bring plants into studio and talk to Deirdre about some of the really easy plants that you can plant at this time of the year for colour. So I've picked you 5 super simple plants. Some are flowering, some are grown for foliage colour. You can grow them in pots and containers if you wish, like I've done with these, or you can plant them out directly into the garden soil. Some are ideal for rockeries or borders, others are suitable for shrub beds. And starting with probably one of the longest flowering plants, I'm going to bring my snips with me because I'm going to show you a couple of tips here as well. So this is a really easy perennial plant. So perennial means it comes back year after year. And this is a plant called Ericinum, Ball's Mauve. And it's a mauve flowering wallflower, which has just come into flower at this time of year. It's got greyish green foliage, which it tends to hold for the winter months. But believe it or not, that plant will flower from now, the 5th of May, right through until late September, October. When planting young plants, particularly plants like these, again, I would give them a light trimming back, because otherwise all the energy is going to go into these couple of flowers at the expense of the plant putting on some new growth. So it's a good idea before planting to give them just a light cut off the flowers that are there, and that will create a bushier, fuller plant. Remember, the bigger the plant, the more flowers it's going to produce. So simply trimming it back lightly before planting is a really good idea. Ericinum looks really well on its own. Remember, this plant is going to grow about 2 feet in diameter. It'll grow about 15 inches or 18 inches in height, and it will flower through until October. If you're filling a bigger area, a larger pot, or you're filling an area maybe between shrubs, just to add a bit of colour, then plant them in groups of 3, spacing them about 15 inches apart. And that will create one big splash of purple colour in the garden, and such an easy plant to grow. So Ericynum, really simple. Here's one that we featured on the gardening programme on the Saturday. We got great response to this. This is a plant simply called angel wings, and it's named, it gets that name simply because of the heart shape or the wing shape of its leaves. The leaves have that lovely downy felt, they feel like felt to touch, and produce a beautiful silver foliage, particularly in the summer months. So as the light levels get warmer, brighter, and the temperatures get warmer, the leaves go a fabulous silver colour. It does produce a yellow flower, but it's mainly grown for its leaf colour. And it is a perennial, which means it comes back year after year. And from a small little tiny plant like that, I have seen them within a couple of years growing at least 1 metre wide. Generally grows about 12 inches, maybe 15 inches in height, and it produces that fabulous silver leaf. Over the winter, the leaves can go back a little bit, but by the time we get into May and June of the following year, you get a burst of new growth. So that's a really simple plant. It's a plant called Senecio Angel's Wings, and you'll find it in your local garden centre at this time of year. Beautiful plant for foliage colour, leaf colour, and it does have that yellow flower as well, but I particularly like it for its leaf. Brilliant in a pot or container, or you can plant it out in the garden soil as well. Here's one I featured last weekend on last Saturday's programme. It's a plant called the slipper plant, and again it's a perennial. You plant it out of doors. Here's one for a rockery, a border. It's got that old cottage garden look and feel to it, and it gets these beautiful, often called the balloon flower as well, because the flower is actually filled with air, so you can actually press the flower and the air comes out from it. So a really simple plant. Calceolaria is the perennial name, or the botanical name for it, or slipper flower. Comes in a yellow as well, and this beautiful red. The red has a two-tone colour, so it actually has red and yellow in the one flower. Really easy plant to grow. Again, if I was planting it, I would give it a slight trimming back before planting, just to encourage lots of leaf growth, and the flowers will come back within 3 or 4 weeks' time. So don't be afraid to trim them back. That encourages a bushier, fuller plant, a better plant really, and you get the extra flowering at the in the autumn and early winter period. Again, I featured the Paris daisies for planting in pots and containers with a clean stem, but we have them here as well in a lovely white form. This is a bush variety, so again, if you want to splash a colour, again in borders and beds, and again it's got that old cottage garden look. Paris daisy or agaranthemum, just coming into flower now. Again, if I was planting it, I would give it a light trimming back to encourage a fuller plant, a bigger plant, because it will literally double its size by slightly trimming it back, and you'll get tons of flower from it. It comes in the white, it comes in the pink, and it's also available in a lovely red colour as well. So Paris daisy or agaranthemum, super in pots and containers. It loves to be in the sun, so ideally have it sitting on your patio in a south-facing, west-facing aspect, or indeed you can plant it in your garden soil to fill up some corners or beds, any gaps that you have. It's a great filling plant. And again, this one is frost hardy. You can plant it out of doors at this time of year, as is the perennial wallflower, as is the slipper plant that can go out now, and the angel's wings is perfectly happy out of doors. And indeed, most plants that you buy in garden centres at the moment can be planted at this time of year.
Just to mention, Paraic, we have a few people tuned in from all over the world and all over Ireland.
You're welcome.
A lot of people are very overwhelmed by the amount of names that we've mentioned in the last 20 minutes. Yeah. But just to mention that the full list of all the names will be on the Horkins Garden Centre website a little later on. We'll share them as well on the Midwest Radio page. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the little box below, because we will be doing a little questions and answers towards the end of the programme.
Absolutely, yeah.
Don't be afraid to share this video as well with your friends far and wide if you think you know somebody that will be into the gardening, or tag them below and tell them it's happening. We'll be with you for another 20 minutes or so. So get sharing, get commenting, and get your questions into us.
So moving swiftly along, so they're 5 of my favourite plants. Just to recap on them, that's the perennial wallflower, Ericynum. I'm sorry about all the Latin names, but think of the common names. So that's the perennial wallflower. Think of angel's wings. It's such a simple plant to grow, and such a beautiful plant. The calceolaria, or the slipper flower, often called the balloon flower, And then the agaranthemum or Paris daisy, which again is super for colour and really is an easy plant to grow. You're always asking me about wildflowers, and it's great to see such a big trend in people looking after the bees and the pollinators and the butterflies. So this is the time of year in early May for sowing a wildflower patch in the garden. If you want to encourage any of the pollinators to come into your garden, the butterflies, the bees, the bumblebees in particular, then there's a collection of flower seeds that you can sow at this time of year. They'll germinate or start to sprout within 3 or 4 weeks' time and come into flower generally about the end of June, early July, flowering through into the autumn. For those of you that have wildflowers in the garden, it's a good idea in the autumn to plant some spring flowering bulbs like daffodils, bluebells, maybe snowdrops, to give a bit of colour in springtime, because many of the wildflowers flower from mid-June right through until late summer. Generally what you get in the box, so this is one specifically for, this is one that actually is suitable for everyone. It's got 25 different varieties of seed in it, and it's one that will suit any type of soil. But what's characteristic about all the pollinating flowers is that they're single blooms. So plants like oxeye daisy, poppies, they produce a single flower which generally is full of pollen or full of nectar, and that's what attracts the butterflies and bees into the garden. They're ideal, say if you had an orchard in the garden and you wanted to reduce the lawn mowing, that's an ideal area. Or if you have an area at the bottom of the garden, maybe you just want to let back to nature, then sowing wildflowers is an excellent idea. Here's one that's specifically for butterflies. So this is a butterflies collection. It's a collection of flowering plants that are particularly high in nectar, because our butterflies love to come and drink from the flowers, and while they're doing that, of course, they're acting as pollinators as well. For any of the collections, this is one called perennial flowers. So this means, perennial simply means that it comes back year after year. So in the boxes you generally have annuals, or sometimes annuals and perennials mixed together. The annuals, if you sow them at this time of year, will flower this year, produce seed, and that seed will germinate next year again. Perennial varieties by their nature, you sow them at this time of year, they grow, but they won't flower in their first year. They'll flower the second summer and every summer after that. So just watch for that. Look for the word perennial. It's written there on the box, and it's a particularly good range. You can even get wildflowers for birds, and this is a collection that produce a lot of seed, particularly in late summer and autumn and through the winter period. So the birds will come and feed on the little seed heads after the plants have finished flowering in autumn. And of course there are bee collections as well.
What about a quite shaded garden, Paraic?
Yeah, there's even some for shaded. I don't know, have I brought, maybe I haven't brought the shaded, no, I haven't brought the shaded selection, but you can actually get a box specifically for a shaded area. So again, it's a blend. In any of the boxes, they are a mixture of different types of seed. So for example, this one is a short mix, so it only grows 18 inches, possibly 2 feet maximum in height. So it's ideal if you want something more low, maybe to sow the seeds amongst other shrubs or whatever. And within that collection, you've got 24 different varieties of flowering plants to give a bit of colour and to offer a bit of diversity. Within the mixes as well, you have got a collection for shaded areas as well, for woodland areas. So if you've got maybe birch trees or a little woodland area or a shaded area, look for that collection as well. I just brought a small selection today just to show people the different types of seed. But there's up to 24 to 25 different varieties of seed in each of the packs. Really at this time of year, if you are thinking of putting in a wildflower meadow, pick somewhere maybe secluded in the garden, you know, an orchard area, an old vegetable patch. Ideally, it should be relatively weed free. So if there are weeds there, you need to get rid of those first of all. So get out the spade or get out the hoe and clean off the area. It is a good idea then to put a little bit of garden lime, because wildflowers actually like poorish soils. So if you've got a sandy soil or a soil that isn't terribly rich, that's the perfect location for a wildflower meadow. They actually dislike really heavy, rich soil. So don't put down any fertilizer when you're sowing the seed. Simply get some garden lime, chuck it on the soil, rake it in, open up your box, shake the seed, rake it in, and within a couple of weeks they'll start to germinate. And do remember that tip, to plant some spring flowering bulbs, and spring flowering bulbs like winter aconite, snowdrops, bluebells, daffodils in the autumn to flower in the spring. And then you'll have colour from December right through until autumn. So again, this is a really good time of year for sowing wildflower seed. So remember, start planting up your hanging baskets and patio containers. Now is the time. Do trim the plants back, add the slow release fertilizer, keep them well watered and fed during the summer months. Deadhead the old flowers as they're beginning to fade, and the plants will reward you with 6 months of colour. It's also a really good time for planting trees and shrubs. The soil conditions are ideal at the moment for getting hardy trees and shrubs out in the garden. It's also a great time of year for the sowing of seeds of plants. Even vegetable seeds or flower seeds can be sown directly into the garden soil, and in particular wildflowers. But thinking about edible plants, I'm going to bring you outside and show you some of the ways that you can grow your 5-a-day simply on your patio using the veggie bag, or what I do here in my house, I use the veggie pod. Now there are actually 5 people in my house, and one of those is actually a vegetarian, so I have to keep him in salad leaves and tomato plants and so on. So I use the veggie pod, or the veggie pod. Yeah, this is the large veggie pod. I have it a couple of years now. This was planted up about 3 weeks ago, and you can see already the parsley is doing really well. I picked some lettuce. I was showing the guys here earlier how to pick the lettuce. We have some tomato plants, some dwarf tomato plants that will only grow to about 1 foot or 15 inches in height. They'll fill out and they'll produce lots of fruit during the summer. I've peas, so garden peas. My vegetarian loves to eat the pea shoots. A few edible flowers, and these can be used in salads, they can be used in drinks, fabulous in a gin and tonic later on in the summer. You can actually freeze the flowers in ice cubes and they're very decorative, but they're totally edible. So if you're picking salad leaves, why not pick a few of the violas as well and use them. I have some iceberg lettuce. A little tip when you are planting, and remember this is only planted 3 weeks ago and it's ready for, I've been picking the leaves already, but it's ready to harvest. But when you are picking the plants from the veggie pod, just take what you need. So to bring out your bowl or your plate and literally just peel off the leaves that you're going to use and leave the plant in situ, and that plant will regrow again and produce lots of fresh clippings. So go out on a regular basis, pick the plants on a regular basis, and by simply taking the leaves off the plants, they start to regrow again. So that same line of lettuce will do me the whole summer. We also have some of the Laura Rossa type lettuce here. Again, I cut that with a scissors or a shears. I just use whatever I need. I simply just cut the foliage and use it on a regular basis. I've got some strawberries. They're beginning to flower. They're actually beginning to, see the fruit beginning to form. So within a couple of weeks' time, that'll be a lovely red fruit and I'll be coming out to pick it, but lots of flowers coming on. So a mixture of some onions that I've sowed from seed. That's white Lisbon onions that were only sown 2 weeks ago, and already they've germinated and they'll be ready for trimming within another 2 weeks. So the veggie pod is a great way to grow your 5-a-day, and as you can see, you can grow herbs, fruiting plants like tomatoes and strawberries. You can grow any of your salad leaves. Spinach is really good, kale, anything that grows fast and that you can trim on a regular basis. The veggie pod is absolutely ideal. It does come with a cover. I generally leave the cover down all the time because the cover helps to keep the heavy frost, it keeps the heavy rain off the plants, but more importantly, it keeps the bugs out. So I don't have any problems with slugs or snails. I don't have any problems with green fly or caterpillars because they physically just can't get in through the material. It also has a reservoir, so it actually holds the water. So down in here, it actually holds 64 litres of water. So when I do get back to having a holiday and going away for a couple of weeks, when I come back, the plants are perfectly watered. So it's a really good way of growing your 5-a-day. This is the large veggie pod. It does come in medium and small size. So if you've only got a balcony or small apartment, then the small one is ideal. If you've got maybe 2 or 3 people in the house, the medium is perfect. But like me, if you've got 5 or more, you need to go for the larger veggie pod. You can also grow your vegetables using the veggie bag. And this is made by the same people that do the veggie pod. It's a simple bag. It's got the Enviro mesh. So again, it keeps the frost, it keeps the heavy rain, it keeps the wind chill off the plants, but more importantly, it keeps the bugs from getting into the plants. And all you simply do is zip it open, Fill it with a good quality compost, and again, I generally use the Bordemona, the Go Greener, or one of the organic composts. The large veggie pod also has a self-watering unit. You'll see it right in the bottom, so it holds several litres of water, which it releases back up into the plants as they're growing. So all you do is simply put a layer of compost in, a little bit of the slow release fertilizer that we mentioned, and you simply start planting. And again, you can use any of your 5 a day. So dwarf tomatoes, this is a lovely variety called Tumbler. It'll be producing its flowers very, very soon now. Perfect in the veggie bag. You can use any of the leaf lettuce. So this is baby leaf lettuce, which again, the more you trim it, the more it keeps on growing. So it's perfect in the veggie pod or veggie bag, or indeed you can grow it in a window box or container if you wish. You've got the lettuce varieties, radishes, herbs can be growing. So any of your 5 a day can be planted. Scallions, the little white Lisbon onions, are brilliant as well. So really you're looking for plants that you're going to use on a regular basis, that you can trim and that will regrow again, and because they grow with such speed within the veggie bag. This is the smaller veggie bag, so if you only want to grow a small amount of fresh herbs or fresh salads, for example, this is perfectly fine, or maybe 1 tomato plant, then get the small veggie pod or bag. You can see I've used the compost. I've actually planted a herb there this morning in that one. So you'll fish probably 5 or 6 plants in the small veggie bag. You'll fish up to 8 or 9 in the large veggie bag. And it's a great way to grow your 5 a day. And it's this time of year in early May that all of the plants here, apart from the tomato needs to be kept inside at the moment. It will be protected within the veggie bag or the veggie pod when the zip is zipped up or it's closed down. But all the other regular veg and herbs can be planted out of doors now. So these are frost hardy, the radish, the lettuce, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower. They all can be planted out of doors. Here's some spinach. It's nearly ready to use. Within 2 weeks, that spinach will actually be ready to harvest and start to cut back. I generally use an organic feed when I'm feeding them. So something like the Westland organic feed is ideal for all your edibles, because really you want to know what you're using and that it is organic when growing your 5 a day. So I use that about every fortnight. Again, I find with the veggie bag, you're not watering as often because the material itself tends to hold the moisture in. So I would generally advise watering the veggie bag at most once a week, maybe once a fortnight will actually be enough. So remember, there's lots to do in the garden, particularly on growing your 5 a day, your herbs, your vegetable plants. It's tomato planting time, but don't put them outside just yet. Keep them inside or keep them in the veggie bag or the veggie pod. They're not safe to put out until about the first week of June. You still have plenty of time for sowing the seeds of vegetables. So all your favorite seeds can be sown now. Radishes can be sown out of doors. Turnip, golden ball, that's a great variety that can be sown now. Beetroot and parsnips, carrots, they can all be sown directly out of doors now. It's also the time of year for planting up hanging baskets and window boxes and containers. Alan, have we a few questions?
We have a few. Do you want to come inside?
Yeah.
Come on inside, Paraic. An interesting question that came in there a minute ago, Paraic. Does it matter what direction the veggie pod is facing?
Ideally, it should be south facing or west facing. So you really need to maximize the amount of sunlight that you have. So I would say pick a relatively sheltered spot, but also pick a spot that you're going to get the most sun. So my particular one is actually south facing, so it gets the sun all day long and the plants just do really well.
Great. Let's stick with some of the veggie pod questions that are coming into us before we move on. You've already covered what sizes they come in. So
three sizes, so small, medium and large. I like to think about family size, so if there's 2 in the family, maybe the small or medium. If there's 3 to 4, the medium size, but certainly for larger families. 5 in my family, and we make great use of the veggie pod.
They'd be fantastic for school as well, wouldn't they?
Brilliant for schools. A lot of retirement homes go for them as well, because they're at waist high, you see, so you're not bending over. You're using clean compost. There's no digging. They're very easy to use, and you can use them 12 months of the year.
That was my next question. You took it out of my mouth. Brilliant. There was a question here at the start. What bush would you recommend to flower the longest this summer? What would you get the longest flower out of?
Well, that particular plant I mentioned, the Cape Mallow. The Cape Mallow is a really good plant. I mean, it's flowering since early April. It will go on certainly till the end of October. The key thing really to keep the plants flowering is regular feeding, regular watering, and deadheading the old flowers. When the flowers start to go over, give them a light, take off the old flowers, and that just keeps them blooming. Having said all that, the Abutilon, the fuchsia, will all, and the agaranthemum, this little guy here, they just keep on going right through till the end of October. So any of those patio plants do really well.
I have to say, every time I saw you snipping the top of the flowers, I just went, oh,
and
no.
I always get that reaction. I do that at Bloom every year, and you get this from the audience. But it's critically important because the plant will try to flower anyway, but if you stop it from doing that, it encourages a lot more leafier growth. You're bulking up the size of the plant, and you're going to double the amount of flowers you get from it. I mean, you can see from that hanging basket look how well that has filled out.
Yeah.
And okay, there's very little flower starting, but when that comes into flower, it's going to be a riot of colour.
Okay. Now, say for instance, I planted my hanging basket 2 weeks ago and I didn't snip the flowers. Should I do it now?
Yes.
Or yeah.
Give it a light trimming back, like I did there, just a very, very light trimming back with the shears, slight snipping back, and that will encourage lots of new growth, and you get loads of flowers. I mean, there's a whole summer yet ahead of us, Alan.
Yeah. How can I protect plants from slugs that won't harm the birds?
You can get, and which is a very good question, because in fairness to many of the companies, they have a lot of organic treatments now for slugs. So go pop into your local garden centre, you can get a slug pellet that's organic. It'll have the organic symbol on it. There are no pesticides in it. Perfectly safe for children, for pets, and for birds in the garden, but yet they're very effective. So pop into your local garden centre, look for the organic pellets, they're very effective.
I have a rhododendron that looks very limp, and I'm wondering what can I do with it at the moment?
Well, it depends why it's looking limp. So it could be too dry. It could be even if overwatering will cause the rhododendron to droop as well. Maybe if the listener takes a picture of it and sends it into the Saturday programme on our WhatsApp, I'll have a look at it and see exactly what the problem is. So overwatering, underwatering can be a problem if it's in a container. If it's limping, the leaves are drooping and it's planted in the garden soil, it could be a problem with vine weevil, which are a small little maggot that attack the roots of rhododendron. So the plant looks like it's drying out simply because the roots have been ate.
Have you ever seen where the leaves go really brown?
Yeah, the browning can be caused by a number of factors, but wind damage would be one of the biggest factors. Right. Also, incorrect soil. Rhododendrons require acid soil, so if they're on a limey soil, you get yellowing and browning of the foliage as well.
Excellent. So there's some great questions coming in. Can you ask if I should replant a mango storm?
Yeah, well, if it's due for repotting, then simply repot it now. Put it into a multi-purpose compost. That Grow-Wise compost, that's really brilliant for lots and lots of plants.
Great. Can you suggest flowers for pots where they are north-facing?
So shade, if it's a shaded area, the two best plants that you'll find that will flower really well are busy lizzies, but again, it's too early to put them out, so don't plant them out till June, or begonias, anything in the begonia family. So non-stop begonias are absolutely brilliant. Hanging begonias are brilliant. They'll tolerate shade really well. So they're probably the best two. Pansies will work to a certain degree, but really for shade, busy lizzies and non-stop begonias.
Would you trim back begonias in the same way?
Well, if begonias are gone a bit leggy, I would still pinch out the growing points. I mean, really what you're doing there is you're trying to get to double the size of the plant to get double the amount of flowers. So certainly if the stems were a little bit leggy, I'd pinch them back. Dahlias, I would do it. Marigolds, all of those, pinch them back. Salvias, pinching them back just gets them to thicken out. Sweet pea as well. Otherwise, you tend to get a tall, leggy plant.
How do you sow the wildflower?
It's very easy to sow. So it's like hayseed or any seed. You simply just sow it as lightly as possible. The area is generally mentioned on the pack. It will tell you the area that the box covers. So it's a simple matter of raking the soil, putting in a little bit of garden lime, chucking the seed evenly over the area and just raking it in. And that's it. Let nature take its course.
Excellent. I'm thinking about planting some strawberry plants at the moment, but should I be worried about the frost at this time of year? No,
strawberries are perfectly hardy. So you can plant them out of doors. You saw them growing in my veggie pod, and they're there for probably the last 3 or 4 weeks. So strawberries will tolerate frost. Now, if you've had them inside for a couple of weeks and they've got a bit soft and the leaves are a bit soft, maybe keep them in for another week or two and then plant them out. But strawberries can be left out of doors 12 months of the year.
Are there particular plants I should be nervous about? Like it was -1 last night.
Yeah, 100%. You know. So any bedding plants like marigolds, salvias, geraniums, people will know these plants. They're generally the summer bedding plants. They will all be damaged by frost if you plant them out. Tomato plants, basil, herb, anything that's frost sensitive. And really my advice is to ask in your local garden centre. So when you're purchasing the plants, just check with them. Will they tolerate frost? Are they okay to plant outside? And if there's any doubt, you're better to hold off for another 2 weeks. And yeah, by the 1st of June, it's generally safe to plant out.
I love this question. Where could I get a nice shears like those? People are very impressed by your shears.
Oh, my shears.
Yeah,
my
shears.
shears.
They just look so sharp. They're probably 40 years old, are they?
They are. I don't know where I picked those up years ago, and I have them, and they're my prize joy. They come to Bloom every year with me when I'm doing my Bloom demos.
But I presume you have them for sale anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually in the garden centre, but but they're terrific.
Great stuff. Let's. There's so many coming in. We might not get to them all, but if we don't get to them all, don't forget you can tune into the gardening programme on Saturday morning between 9 and 10 with Deirdre. So get your questions in there on WhatsApp. And can I prune roses now, or is it a little bit too late?
So I've been telling people since the middle of February to start pruning the roses, and I think I repeat it every Saturday morning with Deirdre as a reminder. If you haven't pruned your roses, please prune them this weekend, or do them today if you can. So they need to be pruned back. Normally it's March, anytime during March, early April. But having said that, if you haven't pruned them, please prune them. Give them a feed, and as soon as they come back into growth, then put a little bit of the rose clear on them. That keeps them clean.
Great. What can I plant in a polytunnel at this time of year?
Well, all of the plants that we featured this morning, like if you're want to do up some of your hanging basket containers, the polytunnel is great. My polytunnel is actually full of hanging baskets and containers waiting to go out later on in a couple of weeks' time. But you can also plant with all the vegetables I mentioned. So the baby leaf salads, the lettuce can be planted, the white Lisbon onions. You can sow seed in the polytunnel and plants at the same time. You could chance putting in a couple of tomato plants, but cover them at night time with a little bit of fleece. So again, take a look at my polytunnel. There's about half a dozen tomato plants in there, and they're perfectly fine and growing really well. So any of the 5 a day can be planted. Strawberries, all the salad crops, all the onions, anything really, herbs. There's so much.
Are strawberries difficult to plant? Like for somebody like me that doesn't have a green finger,
but
I want to feel like very proud of something.
Yeah.
So
there would be a super project to do even with children. So get yourself a window box, fill it with multi-purpose compost or a veggie bag, put the compost in, a little bit of the slow release fertilizer. Strawberries don't require too much feeding. Put in maybe 5 or 6 strawberries. You can put them quite close together, and they will flower as mine are flowering, and fruit this year. So it's a perfect project to do with children. I always say, Alan, the child that grows a strawberry eats a strawberry.
Yeah.
So if you get children involved in the process of growing their own, the chances of them eating it are so much more positive than shop bought. And isn't it terrible to think that strawberries are coming in from Morocco and Spain, and yet we have a fantastic climate for growing fruit here in Ireland.
So get on it this weekend.
Growing them, yeah.
What's the name of the flower feed, and how often should I put it into a hanging basket?
So the one I mentioned, the liquid feed, was the Blooming Magic. So I generally I use that every week to, every 10 days sort of thing, the Blooming Magic. Just mix it in with the water when you're watering the plants. And the all-purpose, multi-purpose 6-month feed, that was from Grosure. You'll get that in your local garden centre. Literally half a handful, maybe 3/4 of a handful to your hanging basket. So you get loads out of the one container.
There's loads to get through here. So angel wings,
Yes.
will the angel wings grow in the shade?
Well, it will grow, but it won't do as well. So generally speaking, silver leaf plants like a bright location. So try to pick the sunniest spot for it. It will tolerate shade, but you'll find that the leaf will lose its silver appearance. You won't get that beautiful silver leaf from it. It'll be more a green leaf. So the brighter the location, the happier angel's wings.
There was a question earlier now that I've lost it, but I think there was a comment where somebody had an angel wing and one of the leaves in the middle was dying.
Well, if this, over the winter, because the leaves grow, the leaf will actually double or treble its size during the summer period. And sometimes over the winter, particularly if you get cold weather, a lot of rain, the leaves can get marked and damaged. What do? All you do is you give it a trim. You cut off anything that's damaged.
That's the answer to everything.
Back to the shears.
Just trim it.
So anything that's damaged, you simply just cut away,
Okay.
give it a feed, and the plant just bounces back again. So don't worry about that.
One or two last ones, and we'll leave it at that then for today. What about setting out roses that I took from last year's rose bush? Is it too soon to plant them out?
No, they'll be fine. They'll tolerate any little bit of cold weather, so plant them out. Any cuttings.
Birds bald my Livingstone daisies every year, but don't touch other plants like the stock or the sweet pea, etc.
Okay, they attack the Livingstone daisies.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Have you any advice?
Now you can get a treatment called grazers, which is made from calcium, and it's used a lot for pigeons if they're attacking plants or if they're attacking vegetables in particular. So look for a little product called grazers. It's used for any pecking deer, hares, rabbits, birds, and that will stop them picking at.
Right, last two questions. My laurel hedge is thinning. Can you recommend anything to help?
Give it a good trim back. So pruning it back a little bit like our basket plants, thickens up the laurel. That's the first thing. So maybe remove 6 inches, 12 inches. So shorten the plant back, shorten the sides back, and then give it a feed of Osmo Pro 6. So at this time of year, as we're coming into the growing season and growth is slow this year, people should be feeding with a tree and shrub fertilizer. So Osmo Pro 6, a handful of that around the base of the laurel, and that'll perk it up. But the trimming is important as well.
Is a Lady Campbell rose easy to grow, and are they expensive?
Well, roses are generally 12 to 15 euros in price for a rose. Now, having said that, roses are scarce this year. It's actually hard to get plants because so many people have come back gardening that plants are difficult to get. So I would advise maybe leave that till the autumn. It's a good time to plant roses in the autumn as well.
Right, I know I had said that was the last one, but this is the last one. When planting hanging baskets, do you make holes in the plastic or the outside?
Well, if there has to be drainage, so make sure that when you buy a hanging basket that, you know, when you put water into it, any excess water needs to flow out the bottom. So if there's no hole in the liner, certainly make a hole. Now my advice is to actually make it high up, so make it up kind of here somewhere. So this acts as a well that will hold a certain level of water, but if the liner fills with water, then your plants won't develop properly, they'll actually rot. So drainage is important in hanging baskets. So if there's no hole in the liner, or if there's no drainage, make sure that you make a hole halfway up in the basket so that it does drain. So any excess water needs to drain out your hanging basket, and that applies to all window boxes and containers. Drainage is critical. The plants will die otherwise.
Great. Well, whilst this programme has been live on Facebook, it is going to be here forever and a day, so you can watch it back whenever suits you, or you can send it to somebody or tag them. And also any of the information from any of the plants, your team at Hawkins are getting all that information together, and they will put it up on a post a little later on that we'll share as well on the Midwest Radio Facebook page. And you're back again on Saturday.
We're back this Saturday, 9 till 10 with Deirdre Kelly, and a great way for people to get in contact is to send us the WhatsApp, particularly take pictures of your garden and send them in by WhatsApp, because we have great fun watching the pictures coming in and diagnosing what the plants are, and you know, to be able to see it is so much better. And
don't forget to follow as well on Hawkins. You have your own page at Paraic Horkin and Hawkins Garden Centre.
Hawkins.ie, if people want to catch us.
How are you at making coffee? Because I am freezing.
Yeah, it's time for the coffee.
Thanks
Alan, thanks a million.
Thanks.